This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about The Adventures of Antoine Doinel, Part 2.
Huh?
We're covering that Bed and Board from 1970,
Mm,
Love on the Run from 1979.
mm.
RJ, if you don't mind,
Yes,
I'm going to recap the mission statement of the box set once more for those just
I
joining us.
I don't mind at all. You do whatever feels right, man.
The release of Francois Truffaut's The 400 Blows in 1959 shook world cinema to its foundations. The now classic
What?
portrait of troubled adolescence introduced a major new director in the cinematic landscape and was an inaugural gesture of the revolutionary French New Wave. But the 400 Blows did not only introduce the world to its precocious director, it also unveiled his indelible creation, Antoine Doinel. Initially patterned closely after Truffaut himself, the Doinel character, played by the irrepressible and iconic Jean-Pierre Léaud, reappeared in 4 subsequent films that knowingly portrayed his myriad frustrations and romantic entanglements from his stormy teens through marriage, children, divorce, and adulthood. With The Adventures of Antoine Doinel, Criterion is proud to present Truffaut's celebrated saga in its entirety. The feature films The 400 Blows,
Celebrated.
Stolen Kisses, Bed and Board, and Love on the Run, and the 1962 short subject Antoine Colette in a special edition 5-disc box set.
Special edition.
So, one
The
thing,
legacy, you say?
since we're watching this on the Criterion channel,
Yes.
I neglected to mention that the actual box set that this all came together in, which is now out of
Mhm.
print, it's actually really cool. I don't know if have you actually looked at what the set looked like. So it's a
Nope.
so what it actually is, it's a suitcase box, and then each of the discs that comes out of it in their little own cases is an article of clothing that he wears in each of one of the films.
Hey,
It's a
I
nice little,
bought
a nice little piece of design, RJ.
the Inception collector set, and it's a briefcase that has a top in it, and you can spin that top as your totem. Is that the same kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
much, right?
Exactly.
I actually also got the collector set of Interstellar, and it came with a single frame from the alleged movie reel.
Yeah, I have that too.
Do you think it's real?
Sure. It's from
Okay.
it's from a print somewhere.
That's kind of the same thing, right?
It's from a print. It's not from the
Yeah.
it's not struck from the original negative. They didn't just chop it up and throw it into Blu-ray cases and go have at it, folks.
Have at it, guys. Here's a thing.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it.
So
Well, that sounds neat. I wish I would have seen that
well,
thing, but
Google image search is but a click away.
I can't be bothered.
You're good. First
Yep.
up, Bed and Board from 1970.
Oof.
Our tagline, first Truffaut gave us the 400 blows, then Stolen Kisses, and now Bed and Board. They really went out on a limb there.
They really went for it in that description.
and now,
Very-
RJ, the synopsis from Letterboxd. Parisian everyman Antoine Doinel has married his sweetheart Christine Darbon, and the newlyweds have set up a cozy domestic life of selling flowers and giving violin lessons while Antoine fitfully works on his long gestating novel. As Christine becomes pregnant with the couple's first child, Antoine finds himself enraptured with a young Japanese beauty. The complications change the course of their relationship forever.
That's an understatement.
So, I found this movie took a little while to get going.
What do you mean, Jarrett?
I don't know. So, I was watching this. It was like a Saturday afternoon, kind of on my couch, lackadaisical, and kind of like in and out of consciousness, perhaps.
Yes.
As I was
Were
watching
you
this.
staring at the ceiling?
No, I was just kind of like, I was trying to like stay there. Maybe I needed to catch up with some sleep. So I was like kind of
Sure.
there. I was following along, but it was definitely one of those things where like, really great movies, they just, you're just awake for, you're there for it. This movie, it lacks that panache,
The what?
the je ne sais quoi, the chutzpah.
Oh, toot sweet.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So this movie here, this year about this Antoine, he's it takes place shortly after his previous actions in Stolen Kisses. He seems to have settled down. He's finding his life dying flowers instantly.
Mm-hmm.
That's a job. There's this
Yes.
lady that's like really lusting for him and just wants to bed down with him. That never really
Does
pays
that not
off.
happen to you?
No.
Okay, that's
she's
fine.
but she's just waiting and just makes these suggestive comments. And he kind of no sells it. Like he's kind of like, I really don't know what you're getting at. So
Mm-hmm.
he's just flat out uninterested, I guess. Because when he's interested, oh boy, the whole world knows.
Yes, that's accurate.
That is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you, RJ.
Sure.
What are his jobs here?
He has a
He's got the-
number of jobs, and
got-
I would say
he's got the
through-
flower dyeing job. That's like
Yes.
a thing that he does.
Yep. There's a number of jobs, right?
And then he does
So
like
throughout the whole series, he probably has 15,000 jobs.
well, first he's a kid, so that doesn't count. And then
His job is being a student, and he's really shitty at
well,
it.
he's a little kid. He's a little kid who's
His job is to be a kid.
yeah. And then the next one, he works at the Phillips, putting vinyl records into sleeves.
And then the military is a job,
Yeah,
and he fails at that.
wow, I mean,
And
that's
then he is a hotel night guardsman,
Yeah.
and he fails at that.
private
Well,
dick.
all of his failures are like not his fault, but yeah. So then he is a detective, and then he is a TV repairman.
Oh, but he was also pretending while being a private detective or private investigator as being a shoe store clerk,
Shoe shopman,
stock boy.
stock boy, and then in this one he is a flower guy, and then he has other jobs in this one. He works at the weird American
Hydraulics.
company,
Hydraulics, in like
Hydraulics?
for like a movie set.
something of the sort.
Something of the sort. It's his nebulous job.
Yeah. So then he does that, and that's a thing. And then in the next film, just jumping ahead a little bit,
Sure.
Jarrett,
To
he's
that
an
level on the
author.
run. Well, he's a published. He published a book. That's not
Mm-hmm.
which isn't a job, but now he just like works at a like print house.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Correct. Accurate. So yeah, he has many jobs.
Just like real
he contains
life.
a multitude. Yes, just like real life, to be fair. Sure.
So this movie, I mean, it's all laid out. It's such a departure, all these movies, from 400
Mm-hmm.
Blows, which is kind of this like grim depiction of adolescence,
Mm-hmm.
and then they kind of turn to these kind of goofy comedy light dramas. Would that be fair to
Yeah,
say?
yeah.
They're-
I think they're all these weird, distinct entities, but they are definitely like
Yeah.
lighthearted, rom-com, melodramatic soap operas
yeah.
in a sense. I felt like these were all. Again, I don't want to like speak too soon, Jarrett, but I thought all of these were more Italian daytime TV than, or not Italian, French daytime TV soap operas than movies.
as you would imagine those things to be, as you've never seen one before.
As I've never seen things in my Western North American opinion, this reminded me of daytime television. All of these. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's like nudity and other things, but it's like, yeah, it's France, man. Anything goes. You know what I mean, Jer?
One thing that I actually thought of looking up was I was wondering, like, because I mentioned last week how there's like these little moments of Wes Anderson flourish, and
Oh yeah,
so
I thought that too.
so I typed up, Wes Anderson, Truffaut, and there's a little thing came up about Jason Schwartzman. Apparently, when he first met Wes Anderson, maybe at some point, he apparently just like probably handed him the set.
Mm-hmm.
So this would have been after he would have met him, because the set didn't come out till later. But maybe he was showing him VHS tapes. He's like, you got to watch this. And I guess there's a lot of Luod's character mannerisms that Schwartzman kind
Jason
of does.
Schwartzman.
And I was like thinking, like when I was watching, I'm like, yeah, there really is like his type of character that he does in everything he ever does after this in what he does.
I agree.
He's kind of like, I don't know, because
agree.
would you call Doinel a schlubby man? Kind of a putz? I don't know, like what his gimmick is, because he seems like he's got a way about him. He has a charm.
Alleged.
He seems to like win people over. Or at least that's what the screenplay says.
Yeah.
Whether or not like this Christine woman would be like so enraptured with this goofball, I don't know. I mean, women sometimes choose real chuds sometimes, but to me, I'm
Well,
like
it's like this. Yeah.
she seems like she's a little bit above his out of his range, out of his
They
class.
they all do, but then that's the
That's
thing. Sometimes you see people like we've said before. Sometimes you'll see people in real life, and you'll be like, "What the fuck? Like, why are these people together? That doesn't make any sense."
oh,
But it happens.
I'm kind of all over the place. But I got these random notes thinking
Go
about
for it.
these movies. Okay,
Just hit
so
it, man.
I was wondering, did Mr. Hodger Ebert do a review of any of
Ooh.
these films? And he did write one for Bed and Board, which I guess was released in 1971 in North America.
Right.
And he actually mentions in it 400 Blows.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes, the Hollywood movie we saw during the 1950s had grown increasingly sterile and clumsy, with a few exceptions, but now here was a new filmmaker with a relaxed and unstudied manner, who recorded the rhythms of life itself. Instead of some arthritic plot, he allowed us to spend some time with the boy Antoine, his parents, his school, and his moody adolescent terrain. There are some movies that are spoken of in hushed tones as classics and studied joylessly for their perfection, but the 400 Blows will never age like that. It will be one of the movies we can put in a time capsule to convince the next generations that some of us at least breathed.
Wow. In Jared, I really feel like, and I don't want to sound arrogant or anything like that, but I feel like in generations, people will come back to the Criterion Creeps podcast and they'll be like, it was very misunderstood, but it was timeless in a sense. And RJ was right
About
everything. And, at the time, people didn't understand. His opinions were too drastic and too controversial at the time. But now it's well accepted facts. You know how science works?
Yeah.
Same thing.
I see.
Like people thought other scientists were crazy.
Did you like the cameo in this?
Which one?
The OG goofy French bastard himself, Jacques Tati?
Jacques Tati? I did not see him.
Where did he pop shitting me?
Where did he pop up?
Did you even
I don't
watch
remember
this
what
movie?
that fucking guy looks like.
Oh,
Do they call him Jacques Tati when he comes in?
It's like like Antoine Doinel's character. He's like waiting at the train station,
Sure.
and he's standing around, and out comes Jacques Tati with his hat, doing the Monsieur Hulot character, and he's got the jacket, and he's looking like a goof, and he goes back and forth. There's no
I remember
dialogue.
that guy. I didn't realize it was Jacques Tati.
Jesus Christ! RJ, man.
If people listening to this email in, I guarantee you 4 out of 5 would be like, who? What's a Jacques Tati? What's a Mon Uncle? What's a Playtime? No, Jarrett. I remember that guy, but I had no idea it was Jacques Tati.
What did you make of that scene?
Nothing. I just thought, like, that's what all these movies I just felt like had goofy ass shit in them. I didn't think it meant anything.
Oh. Well,
These goofy French bastards.
It was a cinematic reference, RJ.
Well, this is a shared universe, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Yep. Well, the previous movie, I didn't even mention, like, there's apparently it was like a big deal, and there's like all these coded meanings that are completely oblivious to us now about this one guy that was from a French committee, like Henry Linguist or something like that, and he had been like removed from this board in 1968 because of his comments during like maybe student revolution stuff, and Stolen Kisses had these references that, like, if you were in the know, you definitely knew what he was getting at, trying to get him.
If you were in the know, if
but
you knew the context.
But there's like, it's impossible. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'd have to like go through and like pick through that, like an article explaining to me what those things are, because like those are like completely lost now. Those are references that mean nothing at this point.
Well, that's all that horse shit where it's just like, you know how much that dates your shit, where I feel like it's such a weird gimmick where even movies today do that, where we always talk about how comedy has very dated jokes, where it's like the comedy is it's contextual to the time era where like with certain kinds of jokes and things that they reference. And it's the same with this, where if you're talking about actual things that happened at the time it was probably good. But then when you make that movie, is your intent to be popular at the time, or is your intent to make something true or make something that lasts? And like, you don't have to make a movie and be like, I really hope that in 80 years people will love this fucking thing. You don't have to do that either. But I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just pontificating to you for a minute. It's like, what are we doing, Jarrett?
Just like
what
RJ,
are we
just
doing?
Regular RJ the Pope here is pontificating.
I'll pontificate all goddamn day.
Mm-hmm.
The most pious of the Criterion Creeps.
I guess like, so the home stretch of this movie, the third act is kind of where I found it was interesting when the relationship was like on the rocks. I thought that stuff was well observed, and like you kind of want them to get back together. And I started thinking about the Richard Linklater Before trilogy.
It's funny that you say that, because I had the exact same thought for both of these movies, but I'll let you keep going.
Because it's like, so like the first half is like, oh yeah, they're hanging out, and he's kind of a doofus, and she seems to have like everything right, and now she's pregnant, and it's like all these like big ham-fisted like, oh, she's pregnant, like visual gags that are like, oh yeah, that's funny. And then they have the baby, and he's like forces the child to have the name that he wants for the baby, and then it's like, oh, but now he's got eyes for this Japanese lady all of a sudden. And then he starts having an affair, and apparently that's a real thing. RJ, people like have kids, allegedly, and then like these dads are like, "Oh, I've accomplished that goal. Time to move along and spread my seed inside of her."
Excuse me.
And so that's kind of like he moves on. His interests are split. All the obvious signs that he's cheating on her appear, and then finally, we get some stop motion animation flowers, and then we get the scene that like is very Wes Anderson when he like comes in, and we get the zoom in on him, and then you see her wearing like the kimono and Japanese stuff, and I'm like, and it's the symmetrical frame and of her face, and I was like, with the use of the like the Oriental music, and I'm like,
the what?
This is exactly how Wes Anderson would probably play it out too. Those beats, and then they're on the rocks, and then they have a very aggressive fight with him pulling mattresses around because they can't sleep in the same bed. And he's like trying to talk her down, be like, no, she doesn't mean anything to me. Can't we just like, I don't want you being mad at me. And that's usually kind of like it's
just my girlfriend, but you're my wife.
Well, so that's an interesting thing that I'll talk about in the next movie too. Is this kind of, and we can talk about it now, I guess. This notion, like, I'm sure you've heard about it, like this idea that like in France, like dudes have mistresses, and it's like, oh, it's just the way it is.
Like goofy you've French heard it,
but you're familiar with that like stereotype, right? You've encountered that in your life.
Yeah, they're insatiable.
Well, okay, so I was wondering about that, and then the next Love on the Run answers that, because they're like, oh, because it was like basically impossible to get a divorce, and so you're like, wait, is that why that was a thing? Because it was like, well, we'll live together, but like he can just do whatever he wants because the system is like, oh, you can't get divorced. And I was like, oh my god, I've never heard that before, because it's always this like more of a gag of like, yeah, I'm insatiable. I must have my garlic butter.
I have a lust for the women.
So yeah, that's what happens when everything you know about a country comes from their actually media that they make, and then other countries making the depictions themselves, like Pepe Le Pew. Yeah.
Oh. No, we're accurate, Jared. You don't have to apologize for that.
So, anyway,
we did it right.
Another good little bit in this movie is the cellar kiss callback, which is which is subsequently kind of ruined because in Love on the Run they just start doing these full on flashbacks. where they explicitly
let's get to that when we get to Love on the Run.
We'll get there, but yeah, like so like in this one it's like, oh cool, it's like the cellar scene when like he like does this full on like head crush face lock kiss to her, which I didn't even mention last week, but I'm like, that's aggressive, that's really RJ-ish. And
excuse me.
And so in this time now it's like they're back at her parents' house, they're going to get that wine in the cellar, and then she gives him a kiss and he's like, oh hey, things have changed, our relationships moved on. It's like, that's really nice. And yeah, like the whole thing of like him realizing how good he had it, and like how terrible this relationship is with this woman that he has like nothing really in common with other than sex.
Like all good affairs.
Like all good affairs. You're like, oh my God, I can't talk to her about anything. And then the whole, like him going back to the phone. And then finally he gets the out because he basically creates this situation where it's like, hey, I'm a dickhead, and she's just like drop dead, like you're terrible, and she finally leaves him, and he's like, yes, I don't have to break up with her, and then he goes back to her, and you think that, hey, maybe they're going to work out just okay, and you're left with this kind of like, yeah, things are going to work out swell.
You're left with that a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah,
and then you got Jacques the Mooch. The guy who keeps seeing Jacques the Mooch, the guy who keeps asking for like more money.
Oh, I gave you 50 francs.
No, I owe you 25. Can I just give you another 25 and I'll give you 50 next time I see you? Yeah, okay, here you go. Hey, I owe you 50, right? Can I just borrow 50 and next time I see you, I'll give you 100? And then you see him at the end. I'm not sure who that dude was. Maybe he's a filmmaker. I want that mystery in my life though. Don't tell me.
Okay. I was gonna say I know who he is, but I'm not gonna tell you, I guess.
Cool.
Jarrett, do you want to know what I think about Bed and Board?
Sure.
I have a lot of the same opinions that you do. When you were talking about Wes Anderson, I felt like this one had a lot of that, where it was like, I would say comedy style edits. The one that I thought was the most noticeable, where it's like the days of the week with Kyoko? Kyoko? Yeah, with Kyoko, where it's like the days of the week, where it's just like him, it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right, and he's doing different things with her. I was like, that seems like Wes Anderson. I also had the Linklater connection on this, in the sense where I was like, hey, that Before trilogy does all of this better than these movies do.
100%.
100%. And then I was also
without
like,
question.
I was also like, hey, you know what's weird? You know that Linklater movie Boyhood, Jared? That was all the rage because it had that iron continuity of one kid for like 20 years. Mm-hmm. I was like, Antoine Doinel, same guy, over like 20 some years.
But it's like more.
It's very loose,
off the cuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's off the cuff loose. But I mean, if you wanted to actually look at it, it's like, yeah, that same actor they kind of followed for like almost 20 years. I'm just making connections, Jared. Are they actually there? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they are or not. That's not for me to decide. So anyways, I saw those things. I found this movie was also like a little bit strange at times. I think the best parts were with his wife and things of domestic discord where they weren't getting along, because I was like, that's real life. I like that. And then it's kind of like, well, not my real life, but it's like that seems like a real life thing where, sometimes people argue.
Relationships are, I think, pretty universal at the end of the day. That's why like there's things where like, yeah, it's not all smiles and sunshine. There's definitely moments, but it's like no one talks about those things because then it's like, oh man, people are going to judge my relationship in this particular way, and I don't want that to happen to me. I don't have it so bad. I mean, then there's what we call toxic relationships, which are like real bad, but then there's like ones where it's like, yeah, you know what? You put two human beings together for any amount of time, and there's going to be a certain amount of resentment that boils over at times. And then usually, hopefully in a healthy relationship, it kind of works itself out or goes back to zero and then starts building up again. But it takes a long time to get there. It all depends about speed, I suppose, of when those things come up.
What's your speed?
I don't know. I think I'm pretty, I'm okay. I think I'm good. But
I'd love to hear what Chanel thinks your speed is. Hey, if you talk to Andrea, she's very upfront. She'll tell you I'm the worst fucking piece of shit she's ever met.
And then I mean, she married you because I mean, what was that? Some toxic something or other. I wasn't.
I don't know. Toxic Avenger.
Yeah.
You can follow the Trauma episode for that.
Yeah.
I agree. My point of all that, Jared, was I liked those parts because I was like, it's genuine. Yep. That seems like a real thing, and I think that's where all of these movies excel the best. It's like, yeah, those are real things. What I don't like about a lot of these movies are where they take off and they kind of go into the, I wouldn't say flights of fancy, but it's like the things that are a little bit out of reality.
The what have you.
The what have you, exactly. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't really, I don't
serve
follow.
A purpose.
Yeah, and like I know people who are probably champions of this movie are like, well, it's like it's saying this about this kind of societal thing about France in the 60s. And you're like, all right, relax, whatever.
Hey, quit setting up all those straw men, RJ.
Those straw men. Like, but that's what people comment on our podcast all the time. And it's like,
Wow,
okay,
they used to. They stopped listening a long time ago.
relax. Everyone, yeah, people keep coming back and trying one episode, and then that's the one they comment on. But so there's certain things that it's like, so what I was saying earlier, that I feel like these are soap operas because it really feels like daytime TV to me, where it's like, it seems like they set stuff up and it's like, we might revisit this in a later movie, but then they never do, right? And then when you go back to the old movies,
so
it's like,
originally this was the end of the series. He never planned on making Love on the Run. This was going to be it.
So that makes it worse for me, because there's things that are set up in this that I feel like have zero payoff, where, and again, I know people will be like, well, does it need a payoff? It's in the moment. The one big thing is the guy who is creepy but turns out to be an actor.
The Strangler?
Yeah, and the Strangler. So it's like they set up this like murderer, and I was like, what the fuck is up with these
his
movies?
theme song?
Yeah, where it's like, even like the last movie with the detectives and stuff, I was like, why is everyone suspicious? Why are there all these people who are having affairs and all these people who are alleged murderers? Why is there this like cloud of like extra stuff where it's like people can't just be fucking normal? There has to be like a murderer around town. It's like, yeah, I realize real life, there's all these things in the news. It's like, well, the city is doing this and fentanyl killed all these people, and it's like, there's a strangler out there, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. But then there's another one, Jared, which I didn't really understand, and it's like that shop owner, when that drunk guy tries to come in.
Oh, yeah.
And then he like turns him around. He's like, what are you looking for, friend? And the guy's like, I'm looking for a fight. And he's like, it's okay, friend. You're okay. Let's get out of here. Let's go. And like, that's the thing. It's like, does that need setup or resolution? Not really. It's a scene in itself. But I couldn't help but wondering. I was like, why is that here? Why is that in here? Because these movies are slices of life where it's just like Truffaut's like, these are things that happened to me, and I am going to include them in my movie.
You're messing up your French accents now.
Oh, Perry. Am I doing French Canadian?
Yeah.
What's the difference, Jarrett? What does it really matter?
Oof. Well, we just lost that Canadians sponsorship deal I've been working on.
French Canada and actual France. We've never heard any viewership from either of them, so whatever. Who gives a shit? My point of all of this is, I feel like this movie's got a lot. I said it in the last one too. I think there's too much shit going on. There's too many irons in the fire, man. Like, I feel like he doesn't have enough of a through line where it's like that one consistent message, other than it's the same guy. And I feel like that's such kind of like a scapegoat for him, where it's like, it's the same guy. Life's crazy, man. Is like, did you think you would end up where you are right now? And it's like, no, not really. I feel like no one ends up where they think they are, except for like really fucking arrogant people. But, well, not necessarily. That's an exaggeration, Jarrett. But all I'm saying is, I get like where he's going with these things. I just think he reaches too much. And I think he puts too much into these, where there's things that get brought up and you're kind of like, what does this have to do with anything? And it's like, not everything needs a message. I don't like that either, where that's when you get into those heavy metaphor fucking Mandy type movies. So not everything needs a message either.
The movie has no plot. It's just scenes.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Like, I found Bed and Board was just something there. It's just something there.
Yeah.
And it's again, I get, maybe that's why people who do like it are like, yeah, it's slice of life. It's like, you got a weird medley of characters, man. This movie also, like, these movies have the worst fucking endings. This one has another one. I don't even remember what it was, but it's some kind of weird freeze frame where it's like, and it like zooms in on a dude's face.
Oh,
But
it's the couple that lives on the same floor as them in the apartment, and
yeah.
because he was like waiting for his wife back and forth, and then he throws her shit down the stairs, and then they do the callback later, and it's like, oh, they really do love one another. Boing.
Do they?
Yes, that's the ending,
I got you.
and it's like, oh,
Wait. It's lame.
but so it's like in some ways it should be like, oh, and then they lived happily ever after in marital bliss.
Should be, but
It's like the kind of humor that you cut out of the newspaper comics and then you put on the fridge.
is it?
Yup.
A little Garfield. Is that what you're talking about?
A little boomer.
Little family circus.
A little boomer. Funny.
Yeah. Okay.
Next up,
Yes.
Love on the Run from 1979.
Mm-hmm.
Tagline, Antoine Doinel. He's got 4 ladies, 9 lives, and plenty of alibis.
Wow. You know, whoever came up with that was just fucking livid.
No,
He's just like,
you know what
this
they
is the
did?
best
They
thing I've
wrote
ever
it.
done.
They sat back. They lit a cigarette.
They cracked their fingers a little bit. They said, I really did it. They did it, boys.
Yeah, he knocked it out of the ballpark this time.
Tell me about Love on the Run.
Beginning with
Mm-hmm.
the 400 Blows, director Francois Truffaut made a series of films about the impetuous Antoine Doinel, in which
Mm-hmm.
this is the last.
Good description.
Antoine is now 30, working as a proofreader and getting divorced from his wife. That is what is written. It being the first no-fault divorce in France, a media circus erupts, dredging up Antoine's past. Indecisive about his new love with a store clerk, he impulsively takes off with an old flame. I like these synopses that make up things.
Yeah, it's like the weirdest thing about it, I think, is it's a lot of half truths, where it's like some of that is accurate, but some of that's a bit of a stretch. I think once you actually watch it, you're kind of like, well,
the media circus.
yes, and yeah, that's like one scene for like 10 seconds.
Yeah. And then
It
it's
doesn't
like,
mean anything in this
hey,
movie.
look, it's me, Colette. I'm a lawyer who just happens to be standing over here and goes, oh, isn't that Antoine?
Isn't that Antoine Doinel?
All
This
right.
is a crazy coincidence.
Wow, this is wild. So this is the film that
boy.
was never supposed to be. And apparently it
Probably
is
shouldn't have.
Truffaut's least favorite of the 5 films.
Good.
And hey, what
And then what?
do we got here? So Antoine and Christine, they're getting a divorce, but it's like they're kind of like, yeah, we just want to get one. 6 months ago, they changed the law. We can do it. Alphonse is grown up. He kind of looks like the little blonde-haired kid from Rushmore, which is like
A little bit. The
Little
kid
bit.
from Dennis the Menace?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And everything's working out fine, you know. He's got a new squeeze. He's got this hot little number working at the record store. And, you know, he's back on the game. Oh, hey, he wrote a book,
What kind?
an autobiography,
Memoirs
a memoir of Doinel.
of Lust.
His, stepdad that he never had shows up.
Who's a character that was in one scene of one fucking movie?
Yeah, and then we get this whole explanation of like, oh yeah, your mother died, and it happened in between the scenes in those previous movies that like
It's
like
off screen
it
is
was
what they call it.
well,
Jared.
it's off screen, but like now they're just like resolving the fact like, hey, you would think that like his mother dying would be a bigger plot beat, but in fact it like
Between the panels.
it's only been brought up here in the final part because you're like, whatever happened to his mom? And it's like maybe the actress died and he just didn't want to use someone that wasn't the same actor.
I might be naive, but I just assumed after 400 Blows, he never saw his parents again.
That worked
like
fine
they
for me.
disowned him.
Yeah, because
So-
I mentioned like when we were watching Stolen Kisses. I mean, like when he's lusting after the store shop.
He's doing what now?
owner's wife lusting. It's
Okay.
like, oh yeah, it's a callback because it's like she looks like his mom, and I mean they never really bring that part up. I mean they've made some comments now at this point in the movie about like how he's like always looking for women to replace his mom. There's those comment like that sort of thing. But
sure are.
so is it me or is the performance here by Colette not very good?
I mean, I think she's fine,
But there's like some
I don't
there's
think
some
there's a lot
weird
to call.
there's some readings in this that I was like, I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to foreign
Hmm.
language because I mean I don't speak the language and I don't know what's good or not. But there's things where I was like watching, and I'm like, oh, they're really like, is this the writing that she's just having to deal with, or she has to make these declarations, and be like, oh, I can't believe it, and roll her eyes, and it's like acting.
Acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, she went to the John Lovett School of Cinema and
Yeah.
Acting.
Yeah, Marie France Pissier. Well, she's in some other stuff of some regard.
Like, honestly, I thought she was fine.
Yeah.
I feel like I think there's bigger issues in this thing than one lady's acting.
No,
So
but that was like I mean, that's like in the current footage that's in this
Yeah.
film.
yeah.
Something that we can talk about.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is the clip show episode of the Doinel adventure.
I called this the Puppet Master 8 of Criterion movies.
It's not that bad. It's just
No.
there's more than framing devices of new footage. There's like actually like some movie, and I've seen some people greatly exaggerate how much clip footage there is. Like they're like, oh, there's like 20 minutes of it in like the first half hour, and I'm like, no, not at all.
So here's the really, and I actually find it more frustrating than anything, is that up front, I understand this movie was made fucking 40 some plus years ago, where it's like, yeah, people couldn't just consume these things on home video and like
they're not watching these back to
watch
back.
all 5 Harry Potters before the 6th comes out, like the day before. I realize you can't do that, so there's like the feeling of need to fill people back in. The thing that I found was frustrating was they have exact scenes that were in the other movies, but then they have scenes that they actually elaborate on more than they were in the originals. So like, if you're a person who saw those movies, even at the time when this came out, those scenes that you've already seen before, maybe it was different then and you'd be more into it. But as a man now today,
as a man,
as a human now today, many years later, watching all these movies within a week's span, when I saw scenes that were like the same scenes, I was like, bleh. I was like, I don't give a shit. But then he like the voiceover and the other things, it's like, oh well, they're like building off of it. That's admirable. But I was like, it's like I don't want to watch this same movie again. Even with this added narration or these added scenes,
they're
redressing like, I don't watch
scenes. RJ, they're recontextualizing it.
I'm sure.
Memory, RJ. I thought you were all about memory.
Well, I'm about learning and memory, my man.
I thought you were about pathos.
Who, me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm about Pantheos.
What about the pathos of, oh hey, Colette has a dead kid?
Okay, so I have to say that fucking scene comes out of nowhere for me, and I was just like, holy fuck, this got dark all of a sudden.
Because like, so there's this moment building up to it, because you're like, hey, wait a minute. It's like, because you brought it up last week when we were talking about Stolen Kisses, and you're like, because you were kind of like vaguely confused, because you're like, wait, I thought this like Christine was like Colette, and it's like the same parents, but it's like, no, it's like it's these rhythms of like, and they spell it out in this movie where like, yeah, his whole gimmick is he basically gets in close with these girls' parents, and then he can make it so he basically traps them into liking him. It's an old smooth move, and he does it twice. But it's also this thing about, because he never had parents, and so he likes this idea of it. So it's not like this total like weird manipulation. It's because like, oh, he's this neglected kid, and he's always running somewhere. So we better say that out loud a lot, saying, oh, there he goes again, that Antoine Doinel. He's always running. So
he's always running, and he's always slipping his hair behind his head.
So there is the scene where you're like, wait a minute, like you said, like that's the Colette with her like husband with a baby, and I went, yep. Yeah. And then while we were watching this, I was like questioning them, like, was I wrong? And then they literally go, hey, he said that he saw you once in the street with a baby, and then they cut to that scene with the baby, and you're like, oh yeah, my child was hit by a car, and you're like, oh, and then you had the child and you ran upstairs with it, and you're like, oh, good God, that's unexpected in this like light breezy kind of comedy bit.
Well, it's like that, and I feel like there's other stuff too that like kind of is more serious than the rest of the shows. Like even when there's that creepy dude on the train who's like, "Hey Colette, want to have sex, baby?" And he's like, "I'll give you 1,000 francs."
Oh wow!
So
It doesn't play at all like that for listeners who haven't seen the movie, but
this is exactly what
continue.
happens.
The
But
staring.
anyways, so it's like, yeah, like, well, that's playful, kind of.
No, but she laughs it
when
off.
it cuts back and
Well,
he's like, look, he's like eyebrows raised. But the way,
that
what
is
I
a
mean is the
theme.
way she describes it.
Yeah.
It's like pretty serious shit, and you're like, oh shit, Colette, telling it like it is, like how it's like to be a lady out there. She's like, yeah. She's like, guys are fucking weird.
Well, because
and they
initially,
always approach me.
because
it's more serious than the rest of the movie, is what I'm saying. It seems
a little, yeah, because of the way it plays itself out in that moment. Because yeah, there's like the scene where he like brushes by her in the close confines, and he's giving her the stare down.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Right, but then she kind of does the haha, men are such weirdos. Because and then earlier there's like other scenes of like just creepy dudes all the time with their hands and their caresses, like because his girlfriend in Love on the Run at the record store, she has that guy who grabs her wrist and does like that weird like inside
There's a lot of aggressive
arm grab, and like that's fucked. Like that's
he's
like
a let me take you out, baby.
Yeah. Hey, girl. I don't know if that doesn't play. That's not my style. I don't know about you, RJ, but
what?
So you were saying these scenes, these tone changes.
Well, I just feel like there's things that are like way more serious, or it's just like completely out of tone, and it's like the last couple movies too, where you have these playful things and then you have these like serious things, or you have these things that don't like really make sense. Where in the last movie it was like this alleged strangler, you're like, why is that in here? And then in this one it's like kind of like a murder mystery for like a part of it, and you're like, where are these
mystery?
I wrote that down. Yeah, I wrote.
Are you
murder
talking about like
mystery
the photo? Like there's like the mystery stuff in it?
No, I think I meant something else, but that's a mystery too. Like that one makes more sense for what's going on in here. I wrote down murder mystery. I don't remember why. Doesn't matter. My point is, I feel like there's shifting tones in this thing, and you're kind of like, well, what are you?
Or like she's the defense attorney that's taking on the case of the man who's killed his kids.
Yeah, that one too, and you're kind of like, man, that's like some serious shit to be thrown in this like TV soap opera, which I know it was made for. This thing, like I said, so this all the flashbacks annoy me. It reminded me of Puppet Master 8, but it's also like, remember Stuck on You, the Trauma movie, or yeah, not the Stuck on You Matt Damon movie, but Stuck on You, the Trauma movie, where it's like people getting divorced and it was flashbacks. Right. I was like, hey. It's just like trauma.
But it was the footage that didn't previously exist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the framing device, whereas this has
a bit.
Yeah.
And then like another thing I found like frustrating, mostly about Antoine Doinel, is like his story's not true. He's always like telling things about like how he saw it happen, and like I get that people see things in their own perspectives, and they're like I did nothing wrong, but it's like a guy like kicking a bunch of kids like off a cliff. He's like, they were the ones who jumped. I don't know. So it's like I realize
I remember
like,
that. I remember when that happened.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like telling the stories, and you're just like, man, this guy fucking sucks. You're like, he's annoying. He like, I don't know. He's a selfish person, Jarrett. And there's also like the other thing I gotta mention, and this is like one of the last things I have to say about this movie, is that I don't understand Truffaut's anti-Kleenex agenda. So like there's all this talk about Kleenex in a bunch of these movies, and people are like, I never blow my nose into paper. And it's all about like hankies instead of Kleenex. And I was like, what is that about? Like I'm sure there's some kind of like 60s French context to that, but I was just like,
well,
man,
by now it's 1979 here. I mean,
it's some weird late 70s content. It's in more than one of these movies though, where people are like, people sneeze and it's like, want a Kleenex? And they're like, oh, I never blow my nose in paper. And you're like, what? What? I don't know. I find these movies disjunctive, disjointive.
And so if that were intentional, what does it mean then?
I don't think anything. I honestly
that's his style. That's just shtick.
I don't think a lot of these things mean anything, to be honest. I don't think they're connected in any way. That's just me, man. I think it's just shit to just stuff for the sake of stuff. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Jarrett, do you know what I mean?
You want to hear from people who hate these films?
I would be into that.
Okay. Well, first up for Bed and Board, I got one for you. Okay. 2 stars, Brandon Habes.
Brandon Habes?
Yeah, there's not a lot of 1 stars or anything like that. So there's a big drop off in the people who are
I don't give a shit.
Following along.
This guy looks like a nerd.
Antoine, what the hell are you thinking? Cheating on a beautiful woman like that? I guess it makes sense.
Ooh, Ansel.
The kid is still running towards that lonely beach shore, looking for freedom, looking for exotica. That Antoine film. That next thing that'll replace the home and world he once ran away from. The kid, even as an awkward grown man, never learned to settle or sit still. He's still a runner, still the same uncertain misfit now, dressed in bourgeois clothes, married but still longing for perfection and finding it difficult to commit. The Antoine Doinel series is an interesting social experiment in the vein of 7 Up and Boyhood. But, as I've stated elsewhere, the series doesn't really need to exist, at least not in the way Truffaut shaped it. He essentially transformed the existential poetry of the 400 Blows into a series of cutesy romantic comedies that feel very goofy in comparison. Not that everything has to be angsty or depressing as far for there to be merit, but holistically, RJ, the 400 Blows feels like the oddball out. Truffaut asks throughout the series, let's see what happened to Doinel. But I kept asking myself over and over, why do I want to follow this kid over a series of films? I was perfectly satisfied with that final freeze frame. But alas, I'm talking in circles now. I've beaten this dead horse enough, and Truffaut has milked this cow enough. Time to move on.
I can't say I necessarily disagree with him, because this thing too, like I said last week, it's like I don't think Antoine Doinel needs to be in this stuff at all. That, like, this is a gimmick if I've ever seen one, for including like characters. It's like, yeah, I understand people go through changes in their lives, and there's a lot of stuff that can happen from when you're 13 to 40, but I don't know, I didn't think any of these things had any merit to include him. And I honestly, I don't think that if it wasn't Antoine Doinel, I don't think anyone would be interested in these movies at all. But
other than
Truffaut fans, yeah. But I mean, Brandon Habs has peculiar taste. Lots of Criterions, but some striking things here. 5 stars to The Big Sick, which is that Kumail Nanjiani movie. And I've said many times, I think that guy's an asshole. I think he's a real prick. Funny Games, 5 stars. Bad call. Shape of Water, 5 stars. What are you going to do? Call Me By Your Name, 5 stars. Jarrett, you know how I feel about that movie. And then there's other things. 400 Blows, 5 stars. Reservoir Dogs, 5 stars. Let's have a look at these half-star movies, Jarrett. Under the Silver Lake, Pink Flamingos. I believe that's a Jarrett pick. Outrageous that they would give that half a star. And I don't know, the normal rub.
And for Love on the Run, oh, we didn't mention Love on the Run. It's got its own theme song.
Love
about with lyrics about editing film.
Love on the Run.
Rich Coral, 1 star.
That's not a real name.
Watching the previous Antoine Doinel consecutively before this one was certainly a mistake, as much of Love on the Run features clips from the previous films. If there had been a gap in viewing, this may have been effective, but for me, it was tiresome. If only the original material hadn't also been so miserable, I could have went with it, but this film is a complete mess. The way it weaves Colette, Sabine, and Christine together is haphazard and lazy. Being the final film, you'd expect some sort of emotional resolution, if not plot resolution, but you'll receive none of that here. Truffaut himself wasn't happy with the way this turned out, and it's not hard to see why. A complete waste of time.
I mean, in a sense, although I believe that this person's name isn't real, They don't have the worst taste, except there's some bad stuff. Like they gave Pan's Labyrinth 1 star. I don't agree with that. Boyhood 1 star, which I believe, as I mentioned before, I feel like that Boyhood in these movies have a little bit of overlap. Also, Matinee 1 star. That John Goodman movie. That's right, Jarrett. That's not a 1 star film.
That Joe Dante.
You know what aren't half-star films? Contact or The Big Chill. Those aren't 5 star films by any account, but they're not 1 star films. Hey, would you give Cemetery Man 5 stars?
No.
This person did.
Adam X, 1.5 star.
Adam Sex.
Perhaps if I'd watched this film as many years after Bed and Board as there were between their years of production, I might have enjoyed it more. Where I only saw a clip show of previous Antoine Doinel tales in a place of memories, I may have felt more nostalgia and a willingness to go along with it, but I didn't. I feel like Truffaut should have stopped with Stolen Kisses, as the last 2 Doinel films just seemed to repeat what had gone before in rather uninteresting ways. When you spend enough time with characters, it's enjoyable to see them later in their lives and played by the same actors at that, but it's not enough. Perhaps this would have worked as a short film rather than using all those clips that just felt like padding to the running time. I mean, I had like way less of a problem with the clip stuff. I mean, it's interesting because like Boyhood, you have like access to the footage of the actors doing these scenes that you don't have to like reshoot things and like do weird makeup, like de-aging Lee Marvin in Point Blank. You can just like, oh hey, that's what that moment looked like. But at the same time, there's so much of it, and like
it's like I said, it's not just like the presentation of old stuff. They do actually put new stuff to it, so I can forgive it for that, right? Where it's like, yeah, it's not just recycled. They tried to do more, but at the same time, enough, Jarrett. Enough. So there was something interesting there. Was that all that person's review?
Yep.
Okay, it wasn't this person. Like 2 people ago, they mentioned 7 Up series. That has nothing to do with any of this shit. That follows like real people every 7 years. I don't see the connection to this at all, other than it's one guy. But I don't think that's fair.
No, I mean that's like I think you see the character grow older. I mean it's like the same kind of like idea, but I mean it's different. I mean it's a documentary, like it's a sociological. No, it's
So Adam X gave they watch horror movies and they give them bad ratings, like Lords of Salem. They gave Man of Steel a 0.5 star. Lords of Salem 0.5 star. As Above, So Below a 0.5 star. That's a bad take if I've ever saw one.
But maybe it really sucked in theater though, if that's how they saw it.
That's what a lot of people say. I mean, their ratings aren't bad. They have very few 5-star movies. It's Twin Peaks and Aguirre, Wrath of God. That's about it. It's about it, man. Like all these people talking shit about these movies, they don't have a horrible taste.
I mean, the biggest criticism. I mean, at the end of the day, these movies just like they're movies, all right. Like there's like I would never watch them again. So they're
they're movies, all right.
They're check marks on the march.
Yeah, I mean, well, for us, for other people, don't bother. I would say
I'm not other people.
Well, yeah, but for all those Truffaut people out there, it's like I wouldn't bother you guys.
After the break, things seem good right now, but next episode, RG's got custody of the kid. I'm banging record store employees, Japanese ladies.
Is it important that they're Japanese?
To the plot, absolutely.
What?
It's absolutely essential.
Oh my God. What?
Podcast chronology. And then RJ finds out his mom died between episodes, but it's no big deal.
Off air.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, that was
between
really sad.
Panels.
I couldn't make it to the funeral. I was recording the podcast.
Yeah. Wednesday nights, man. Can't do nothing else.
Sorry.